roll.
We all set to go?
Yeah.
Okay. We thought we'd do something a little bit different this year. In previous years, we've all seen the work that Alan and Linda do for modern films. And as fans, we like older films where the effects work was done differently. So what we thought we'd do this time out is put the old and the new together, almost side by side, so we can see how effects work has evolved over the years.
We're not going to do underneath the arch.
Underneath the arches, in Sunshine Road, next door to Miniature Street, in Composite Lane. Right, this is exactly what we're going to do. Show reel. Well, we've got show reels. What we're going to do, we're going to show you a show reel. First one will be mine, where things were done old school. So you can watch the show reel. Then we're going to rewind it. Then we're going to play it again, pause along the way. I'll explain the shot, where you can see it, etc., etc. Have a little fun. And
so it's basically so that you can sort of recover from fits of laughter and stuff.
Just like bursting tears. Let's go. Top that. Okay, we're now going to rewind it. This is the flop shot. Obviously it's a take on Star Trek, but sci-fi is very expensive to make. So you get the frame, you just flip it over the other way, and you can use the shot again. Battlestar Galactica and Buck Rogers in the 23rd century, Glenn A. Larson used a lot of flop shot. Foreground mount. These, the four Teletubbies, I had to split screen to take myself out. So what I did is I shot a piece of video and put like holes in it. If you watch carefully when it's run, you'll see that I accidentally hit the camera and I had to pan scanning back in. Yeah, he moves. Max shots, obviously, they're used a lot in films. The worst one I've seen is Star Trek The Motion Picture right at the beginning. A really bloody awful mat. I think there's been absolutely great ones. Moving along, anyway. The BBC micro effect. Used a lot in Doctor Who, around the Peter Davison years. You get a piece of footage, you draw in a laser strike, and you, this will be all black. You whip out the black, drop it in, job done.
And then you set
Remote control vehicles. Lots of fun. George and Gracie, Star Trek 4. Remote control. If you look very carefully when you first see them, the diver is still holding the tail of one.
Really?
Before he lets it go. For your eyes only, the pre-title sequence with the helicopter going in and out the building. It's a radio-controlled helicopter. Obviously, you don't want to use something too big because it's just too damn bloody dangerous and expensive. So that's radio control. Don't know if they still use it now.
They do.
Jumping ahead.
Jumping ahead.
Don't you love it when things go wrong hideously?
Does that really fuck something up? Definitely requires a computer.
In the old days, it used to take me hours to make just one mistake, but now...
Yeah, in no time at all.
How do we own 50p to start?
Yeah, 50p to start.
Apparently not.
Right. Okay, right, where do you want to go to?
Who likes zombie films? If you're going to zombie film and it's got Tom Savini doing the effects work, it's a good one. Very simple. This guy here, you know, Tinky Winky and Poe, obviously had a tube from his mouth. You really want to know where tubby custard comes from, didn't you? Coming out, and a syringe which I made up a load of gloop, salad cream and a couple of egg whites. Squirted up Alien is a good one, the chest burster. When that thing went off, they weren't acting. Veronica Cartwright freaked. So yeah, it's an in-camera effect, tubes, real garbage.
And a video that was banned from YouTube.
Yes, this video is banned from YouTube. But it's going back on when I get home, because they might not spot it. Okay, moving on. Oh, pyro. I love pyro.
Yeah, we gathered that.
We're still picking up chunks of him. Now, thankfully, Gizmo was 1-to-1 size, so we could actually film it in real time. If it's a thing is actually smaller, you slow the explosion down. Derek Meddings was good, pretty good at this when he did Thunderbirds, making miniatures look bigger. You just overcrank the camera. When you play it back at normal speed, the explosions look a hell of a lot bigger. Okay, moving on. Optical planet building. Did anyone see the stage play Time? Where they had this big replica of Laurence Olivier's head and they projected onto it. I think they used some of the footage for Sky Captain. Similar thing. This is Scotty Blackplay, and you've got this, basically a ball which you cock up. Do you know?
Just can't get the staff.
Yes, you're right, you can't get the staff. You know, I should have brought in another amateur enthusiast instead of a professional.
You're not paying him enough then.
Yeah, like I I say, the stage play time, they had a three-dimensional mock-up of Laurence Olivier's head, so they projected this thing onto it, and they had full relief. So you get something like this, a ball, which you project. This is actually a photograph of a nebula taken in from the Hubble telescope. You notice those Space 1999 shots, they're all gaseous planets. Yeah. You just project that onto a hemisphere or a sphere stuck in the studio, and of course you get the perspective because its ball is round.
I seem to remember there was one con we went to where the effects of the sun there told us one of their planets was Doctor.
That is
One of Star Trek?
Star Trek Next Generation.
No, yeah, the guy walking into the effects studio stepped in something, thought, what's that? Ran in,
that's got a
got his
brilliant
camera,
texture.
ran out, photographed the poo,
Yeah.
and then I think it's in Star Wars. It's in Star Trek or Star Wars.
Yeah, but it works.
There's a dog poo planet.
Yeah, it works because since it's got a ball, you get the distortion. It works. It looks round. Okay, we can move on.
I don't know if I can do it on, you know, I'm incompetent.
Okay, what's wrong with this shot?
Why is it lit from this side when the star's that side?
It's not in shadow. You find a lot of stuff, like on map paintings with the shadows painted on. Also, this is the start. It's not fixed. You watch it wobbles about a bit. This is just two things stuck together. Because I like Space 1999. Right, if you stop there, you notice the eagles do not travel over a star. Basically, you film them, crank the camera back, put in your star field, expose the film again, and you don't get ghosting. Another thing with Space 1999, they only had two 44-inch eagles. So if you wanted more than one eagle like this, you use cardboard cutouts. And they used a lot of them in Space 1999. If you sort of watch it, the perspective never changes because they're cardboard cutouts.
Harry, they did that with the Daleks as well.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me.
If you look down the corridor, the Dalek at the end of the corridor,
It's a cardboard cutout. Yeah. Okay, if we move on. Again, cardboard cutouts, and they don't.
It's clicking on the right button, it's not fair. It's not fair.
Should never have installed that AI in that PC.
Never should have bought that laptop. Never should have bought that bloke.
Well, next time you do your own
He's bought the laptop and he hasn't paid you yet, has he?
payment, what the hell's that?
He's still owes you for his pint.
Right, there we go. Still cardboard cutouts. Right, something slightly different this time. If we go Star Trek TNG, if we move to the next shot. Have you ever watched Star Trek, the title sequence of Star Trek Next Generation, where you get the Enterprise, it warps, it stretches, then disappears, and all the windows fall off?
Yes.
Have you noticed that all the windows fall off? You've never noticed this?
No.
You're not paying attention. Right. The Enterprise comes in, stretches, goes into warp. When it stretches, they put in a slit scan image. And of course, when it comes to, since it's all filmed as separate elements, they filmed the Enterprise, they stretched it, goes into warp, then they came to put the windows on it. Of course, as soon as it stretches, they couldn't fix the windows on. So all the windows came off. But this shot itself is actually quite simple. You take the same piece of footage, you cut it in half, you play one at one speed, and the rest of it you speed up. You just put the two together. Hey, eagle goes into warp. Dead easy. Whoosh. Stop motion. A slightly different use for it. You know, in reality, when you're using real steel firearms in film, if you watch old war footage, you never see the ammo come out. It's slowed down for modern productions, but stop motion, 6 frames for each cartridge that flies out. You know, one after the other. bloody hated doing this. Okay, if you move on slightly. Right, Star Wars. Again, real steel firearms very often turn up in sci-fi films. You had stunning patches in Star Wars, Beretta 93R in RoboCop, but thankfully that didn't fire laser beams. You sort of notice that, again, you get limited muzzle flash with them, and you never see the cartridge going. If you see Star Wars Episode 4, where Harrison Ford, they're in the prison block, Harrison Ford fires into the console. Yeah, you don't see the cartridge come out, but you hear it hitting the floor and rolling around. That's because it comes out so fast. Yeah, but yeah, real steel firearms still used in sci-fi. Aliens is another good example. James Cameron wanted bigger muzzle flash. He was using 90mm. He said muzzle flash ain't good enough, so he upped it to a Thompson with a 45 ACP cartridge. Works. One thing you should remember that is blanks use gunpowder, live ammunition uses cordite. So every time you see Bond productions where they put this great big muzzle flash on and all this ammo spewing out, it's complete rubbish.
It's the movies.
It's the movies, but it's rubbish! Move on.
Yes, Master.
Ah!
This is the voice of the Mr. Rock.
Yeah. Of dust guns, spark guns and other things flying across the screen. You find a lot of this used in car films. Well, films are involved in Knight Rider. You've got someone stood just off camera with a big spark gun and you just go, sparks hit the car and just bounce off. It's done with a spark gun. Dust guns do as well. Me, I'm using exploding BBs. Because I'm a cheap bastard. Normally there'd be something like squibs plastered into the wall, and you've got some bloke in behind the set with this great big box with wires hanging off it, and just going, watching them all go on. Spot gun, cheaper. Don't look as good though, but you don't get bits flying off the wall, but nice cheap effect. Spot guns. Okay, let's move. Ah, more pyro. I just added that for a bit of fun. I just like destroying stuff. Who cares? I'll give you a move on the game.
Harry, are you the kid in 9mm?
This lot, this is basically squibs. I use bangers. You know, you usually get blood bag, piece of sheet steel, and a squib in behind it, which blows it off. Probably still used a lot now. I have seen. I'm not going to talk. I'll let him talk about the modern version. Bugger it. But I basically use bangers.
You don't get anything out of me because I'm a visual effects guy. That's a specialist.
Moving swiftly along like a herd of wildebeest wandering across the plain. Ah, split screen. An effect as old as the hills, he said. Now, I'll just tell you, one side is masked off, and so basically I'm sat there, that seat is empty, then I swap around, I'm sat here and that seat is empty, and you get the two halves of the film and splice them together. A bit of a trick this. Now I pick up the paper. In reality, when I'm sat here, the paper is already there. So when you see me actually holding the paper here, the paper is actually sat here when I do this half. So two masks are used. I just like to bore you. I just like this shot. Split screen.
Don't worry, there's not really two of him.
No,
no.
Ah, Star Trek. The transporter effect. I take it you all know how this was done? No? Big glass of water. Glitter. Stir it up. Shine a light. Film it. And then just mat it in. That's all the Star Trek effect. We're talking the original series here. Yeah, it's big glass jar of water with glitter in it.
Don't forget the rotoscoping and the optical printing.
That's next. Moving swiftly along.
Even older one, Barry, when they did the...
Ah! Rotoscoping. Ha ha ha. Rotoscoping, probably the best known use of this. If anyone's seen Ralph Bakski's Lord of the Rings, the animated one,
Yeah.
Yeah.
virtually entirely rotoscoped. The fluid motion is very fluid. You know, they almost look ready. Snow White and Seven Dwarfs, another one that was rotoscoped a lot.
Yeah, well, Snow White was.
Yeah.
You can tell her dress is really good, and
Yeah.
the motion's really natural. So they filmed an actress in black and white film, projected it on a rostrum, and then the artist traced her outline off frame by frame. Hence the dwarves look animated, and she looks very smooth.
Yeah, you get very natural movement out of something that's right. This particular piece is 138 frames long, and I had to blew myself out 138 times at 25 frames per second. It took me several days to do in the evening, but thank God it was simple, because all I had to do is blew myself out. Of course, the background is just this, but grayscaled and fuzzed up. So when I put this in front of it, take the blue out, you see the background, job done. Simple, isn't it?
Yeah, modern version of this, they use a thing called rotosplines. So basically, in a paint package, you can draw a spline around the thing that you're interested in. And that spline has key points on it. And those key points can be animated on keyframes. So instead of having to do every frame, you can kind of go forward 10 frames, slide the spline to the new position, move the control points around, refit it to the object, and the computer does all the frames in between for you. But it's still time consuming, and a lot of modern films use it, and they take students out of college and make them do it.
Cheap.
Or my
Or
wife.
other people.
Yes, Roto Bunny.
Okay, moving on. You see films like Silent Running, where you've got all these aggro ships. Of course, there's only one miniature. So they film one miniature, move it, film it again, move it, film it again, so it looks like the entire space is actually filled up with spaceships. Fairly common. Another thing that they did with Space 1999 is they only had, like I said, two 44-inch Eagles, but they had a 22 and 11. So they put the 44 at the bottom, the 22 in the middle, and the 11 at the top. And it all looked like they were all spaced apart, where they virtually were just stacked up. It's a principle of forced perspective. Other forced perspective miniatures include Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. The Golden Gate Bridge, when you look at it, it looks completely natural, but if you turned it on its side, it's actually sort of one great big triangular shape, where they've actually shortened it to fit the set. That's forced perspective. Other things you can do with these sort of things is you film your miniature and you can drop it in different backgrounds. Again, this is used a lot. Battlestar Galactica and Buck Rogers, Glennie Larson, cheap bugger, because sci-fi is just so expensive to make. Okay, move on. Transitional shot, don't worry about it. Oh, slit scan! God, it took me ages to work out how to do that. 2001: A Space Odyssey, obviously. Time Tunnel's another one, where they use slit scan.
Doctor Who?
Yeah, another one. The title sequence is slit scan.
Well, that's a bit different actually. You slit scan in the true sense of the word. They reflected into a chrome tunnel from the effect.
So what is slit scan? Who's played with a flatbed scanner? Yeah, you see the little bar going across? Basically, so that's your slit. It's taking a slit of a picture. Now you take that slit and expand it, and that's what that is. An expanded slit of a picture. This is actually neon lights in Las Vegas. That's all it is. And if you probably won't see it, I never even took the watermark out. If you Google 2001 slit scan, there's someone who's taken all the slit scan images from the film and they've put them back together again to what the original photograph was. You know, coral's one of them. It's actually quite interesting, but I'll let you do that. I can't be arsed with it. Yeah, so that's slit scan. So that's just about wraps it up.
Yes.
Hooray! I'm going to sit down and now you can make it for yourself.
Maybe So, to do a bit of juxtaposition, the birth of kick-ass visual effects. So, I always wanted, a few years back I managed to find a film that seemed to cause a bit of an issue at Armadacon, because it's kind of managed to sort of stay, Slave Girls and Beyond Infinity. I've managed to find another one, which I really like, and it's very interesting, which you'll find out when we get to the end of this presentation, or this bit of the presentation.
Have you got that course figured yet? Here it is, sir. A collision course with Earth.
It's a washing
up liquid bottle.
And some Lego.
Just couldn't let it go.
So it's not the thing I'd expect to see in Power Rangers.
Watch the smoke rising in that shot as it rises from the bottle that's going across the wires.
Commander, we just passed through zero gravity. Right. With our ETA. We're due to dock in 30 minutes and 11 seconds.
This is how to do it. Out of focus at the back, and in focus at the front. And it wobbles. Ready for the docking sequence. So here we go, we go in at an angle. In at an angle and straight up. Else. Straight up to the giant sphincter.
Right in now.
And there's how to do it properly.
2001. Budget, didn't he? Okay, how many people here play the league?
Yeah, it's illegal. It is illegal.
We know how to park.
Have you been playing Elite
Yeah,
yet?
flipping docking computer.
Docking computer for wimps.
Oh, you have to look.
Literally, docking, I'm all pretty sad.
Yeah, there's a Kickstarter project where a version of it. Like side up.
Lovely door.
You ready for the horrible reality?
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's the
This is
same.
the horrible reality,
The green
That's the
slime
same.
are coming.
right?
I remember.
Ready?
I've got both.
Escaped rather than released, I think.
Wow! Both can from MGM. Okay.
Sorry, yeah, can. Well, one should be canned, that's for sure. So bizarrely, MGM Studios released something that was really shit and something that was really amazing in the same year.
Was budget anything to do with it?
I would imagine it was, just a little bit. Just
And acting.
Well, that
Ah,
budget
sure.
as well.
However, there is one thing about
But obviously 2001 was a groundbreaking movie, so, and it was a very hard film to make. And as you all know, anybody who's ever watched Kubrick's film career, it took 6 years to make the movie. Not the least for the fact it was a Kubrick film, but also because the visual effects had never been done before and took a hell of a long time to do. And some of the techniques Barry were talking about were kind of in this film. So obviously 2001 used miniatures, really, really nice miniatures. It also, like Space 1999, was the forerunner of using lots of photographs of miniatures. There's a very good reason for that, which I will talk about. And to actually get the spacecraft in front of the starfields, unlike in Space 1999 years later when they couldn't afford to do that, because being a TV show they had to wind the camera back and double expose the eagles in. Obviously Kubrick wasn't going to stand for that and wanted them going in front of the starfield. Well, back then rotoscoping was even harder to do, and it was done the same way. Barry did it in a much easier way because he had a computer to do it, but back then it was done on an animation rostrum, and for every frame of the film of the model they projected onto an animation rostrum which was down that table, and the artist would put a animation cell onto a peg bar and they would hand draw round the edge of the Discovery for one frame, and that cell would be put on a stack of cells and they would get the next cell and draw around the shape of the Discovery, and that stack of cells would go to an inking department, and some sucker in the inking department, or some suckers, because there's quite a lot of them, would have to paint in the black paint into the inside of the drawn area to make the matte that was required. That matte would then be refilmed to make a black and white matte and used in an optical printer to basically superimpose the models onto the background. And it took a bloody long time, 6 years. So now just to show you the difference, this is one of the classic model shots, and you know it's a model shot because its legs are doing things, opening in other words. So this is kind of them actually filming the model on the stage, and then, as I said, some poor sucker having to hand paint maps for all of that notion to get it in front. But this one is a photograph. And the reason it's a photograph is twofold, because obviously they did want to try and help themselves a bit with the visual effects and not completely help themselves. Another Photoshop. And the reason for these two in a way being Photoshops is if you look at them in the film and not on a crushed screen like this, you can see the actors moving in the windows. And that's very hard to do. Certainly was still very hard to do in 2001 on a model shot like this. You just wouldn't be doing it. It's very hard to do. But when you have a photograph, you can cut a hole where the windows are, and you can, because it's a still, you can effectively project the live action into that area. The other thing about a photograph that's very handy is that you only have to paint one matte for it, because it is literally a cutout. So you paint one matte, and the move you're seeing there is done on a rostrum. And even back then, the rostrums were motorized, so they could actually do a repeat move. So you could effectively drive the rostrum down in the photograph to get the move, and then put the matte on the rostrum and drive it down with the same move, and you'd get your travelling matte from one still image. So that was very much the reason. You'd also then project the footage of the actors where they needed to be in the cockpit, and again run the same move down the rostrum. So that was one of the big reasons why they used photographs. is because it was expedient to get the effect done. Otherwise, it would have probably been a 12-year film, not one that would come out in any reasonable time frame, but still an amazing achievement. Nowadays, as I mentioned earlier, rotoscoping is a bit easier. It's computer assisted big time, and just about any film you care to watch today, including the likes of Skyfall, will definitely have rotoscoping in it, and you just won't know it's being done. Right, okay, so that was the start of all of that. And then what happened, of course, is technology moved on, and we had Star Wars, and Empire Strikes Back. And obviously we have space battles, so as space, which we're going to do next year, and again miniatures. But this time, we're automating the travelling map process, because this time we're doing blue screen. So the miniatures are in front of a blue screen with computer controlled cameras on crane arms on tracks that can repeat, which is not something. 2001 was able to do something like that. The Discovery, the famous big Discovery shot where you first see it after they come out of the title saying 6 months later, and you see the ship come past and it keeps going and keeps going. That was a big long dolly track, and what they did was they motorized the dolly with a very slow motor that would just turn over reliably. So it wasn't true motion control because it couldn't exactly repeat, but they could put the dolly back at the beginning of the track and set it going again, and it would take so many minutes to get to the far end, or hours, and you'd have your shot. So we're now in the age of computer controlled motion control rigs, as they're named, which is basically a fully computer controlled camera, fully computer controlled boom arm on tracks that can repeat the same move. And what this meant is you could do two things. One, if you shot your model against blue screen, you could then optically use the blue screen to extract the model and put it in front of a different background. Or two, you could run the rig again with the model under different lighting conditions and get it to make the map for you. So it wasn't uncommon on films to flood the model with a bright light source against a dark background and refilm it, and that would basically become your travelling map to save an artist having to sit there hand by hand putting them together. But you still have to put this stuff together on a thing called an optical printer, and an optical printer basically is a device that can take multiple pieces of film on one side through a projector and reconstitute them with by repeat running different bits of film and expose out onto a new piece of negative stock. And obviously that technology dates all the way back to Linwood Dunn's birth in King Kong. And by the time we got to the Star Wars films, optical printers were very well established, they were very accurate. You'll still hear the term, sometimes you see them. Does anyone know the concept of what a matte line is? So, sometimes
around the round corner in return.
Yeah, well, a good matte line is, you mentioned it, the first Star Trek the Motion Picture, when you see the Klingon battle cruisers.
Yeah.
If you watched, you'll see there's a big black line around the shape of the ship. What that is, it's the matte not fitting. And the reason the matte wasn't fitting is not because the people doing the shoot didn't do their job, it's because it's opticals. And the thing is, film, when it's processed in a chemical bath, it either shrinks or it expands, and you don't know which way it's going to go. So no matter how careful you are when you do films like Star Wars, when you put that negative into a bath and get it processed, it may get bigger and it may get smaller. And unfortunately, that means that when you put your shot together, you might see a black line around the edge, or not, or it might go transparent. That was the classic problem. That's why when they redid the Star Wars films and digitally remastered them, what they actually did was they removed a lot of those matte lines to get rid of them. The famous one being the blockade runner going up inside the Star Destroyer at the very opening of Star Wars. That had a huge wobbly matte around it, and they got rid of that in the remastered version. So anyway, we have So, the wonderful world of optics. That second opening shot there, it's quite a famous shot in visual effects land, which is the one where you see the Death Star with the hundreds of ships coming at you. That broke the world record for the number of elements put through an optical printer.
At that time? At
that time. 78 passes to put that shot together. And if you made a mistake, you kind of had to go back and do it again. They did make a mistake. It's been removed from this print because they digitally painted it out. But famously, when the Millennium Falcon goes over camera, if you see them framed through the original movie, which if you've got it on DVD you can do, you can actually see the outline of a TIE fighter right in the middle of the Millennium Falcon, which is basically one of the missed passes of one of the travelling maps. And they couldn't afford to do it again, the shot, so it went in the movie and it's in there to this day. It's in that version.
I think the current record holder is Independence Day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Independence Day, of course, digital is in, so there's a lot of stuff on Independence Day.
Well, it still had a lot of the most screen elements at any one time.
Yeah, I mean, nobody gives a damn about layers now in comping because it's all done digitally and computers handle it, so. Right, so we jump forward to Revenge of the Sith, one of my favourite films.
Not!
You just wish, George, Steven Spielberg had been on the set at the end, go, George, I really don't think it's a good idea for him to step forward and go, ooh, I think it's a bit cheesy. Oh, shit. Anyway, yeah, so, Space Battle, obviously, another one. The miniatures, of course, now are all digital. Computer technology is now so good that you can write anything and make it look real, if you throw a bit of money at it. And we know you can do it with creatures. So my sales pitch, you remember for the Armadacon film, we can do space opera. It's a hell of a lot easier now on computers than it ever used to be. So totally simulated, not one miniature around really. They still built, sometimes they built miniatures for reference, because they used to like having them, so they'd go to the art department and say, make us a model because I want to see what it looks like, and put it on my desk, Mr. Lucas. So one of the nice things about this technology, of course, is if you have one ship, you can press the clone button, have as many as you like. Now, obviously, you can do that optically. So when they were doing Star Wars, they were doing the same thing with film cameras. But the trouble is, any time you want a different angle on the ship, you would have to program a new move on the camera and spend days on stage doing it to get the other angle. Now, you just have one digital model, and if you want 1,000, you can have 1,000 in your shot, and it's simply down to an animator to position them and animate them and light them. So it's come a long way. The only danger of digital, which you saw a bit towards the end of there, is you have a believability issue on some things, especially with animators. Those doors sliding across, such huge things, yet boy are they going fast. I mean, these things are like how many buildings high. So sometimes, I think one of the worst offending films for that was the Jonathan Frakes Thunderbirds movie, where things like that. If you watch Thunderbird 2 landing, it's really bad because it doesn't seem to have any weight. It kind of comes down and goes donk, whereas in the original Thunderbirds stuff done by Derek Bellies, it actually looks pretty cool. So this is one of the problems with digital, is educating artists, because a lot of artists who come out of colleges are now taught purely on computers and not taught about filmmaking. They're not taught about physics and the real world, and they often come out and you have to then say, you do know why that shot looks crap. It looks crap because basically you haven't put any weight into the character. It's not feeling heavy, and stuff like that. So we did have a little battle with people to get things done. So anyway, I think since we're running over, that's it.
There we go.